America's workforce. Its strength is our nation's success. Join Ronnie Spellman on I Build America podcast as we explore innovative solutions and inspiring stories from leaders and workers shaping America. Discover actionable insights to build a motivated workforce.
Welcome to the I Build America podcast. I'm here with the wonderful guest, Maria Posey, who is with Viking Impact Advisors. You're the CEO and founder.
That's right.
And you work in the entire workforce development space.
I do.
What do? What does the business do?
So the business is first and foremost to help the workforce system do more with less, do better, improve impact, strengthen operations, and serve the job seekers, the customers in the optimal way possible.
So how did you create the business, first of all? What is it that brought you to that unique specialty and helping to create efficiency in operations for workforce development?
So I've always been a puzzler.
Okay.
Ever since I was a kid, I just relished in the challenge of taking however many thousands of pieces of disparate single entities and putting them together in a beautiful picture that fit well together, that told a story, that conveyed an image that makes sense. And that mindset, I think, is really what inspired me to get into systems change work. Because if you think about a system, it has all these different pieces, these different stakeholders, different actors doing their own thing, beautiful in their own right. But when you bring them together and see how they can fit together, something even greater emerges.
Now, that's absolutely amazing. I've spent most of my early career in engineering, and really similar, trying to find out ways to build greater efficiency in systems. My first job was working at a manufacturing plant for a really large global manufacturing company. And our goal was to reduce bottlenecks within that operation. So how do we either speed up the process so we can get greater volume without getting greater defects? And it was just I learned TQM, Total Quality Management back then, and just-in-time inventory management. And it sounds like you're doing the same thing within the workforce development community.
I do, but instead of increasing efficiency of a production line, I'm looking at organizational efficiencies and how can you take starting with an organization's vision and mission and purpose, translate that into clear, concise goals that translate into clear, concise, aligned activities that ultimately help frontline staff implement activities that are truly going to make a difference in people's lives.
So what does your client look like? Is it a state or a city or a workforce board? Who do you typically work with in going to help them build out that strategy?
I can work with any one of those because at the end of the day, they're all part of the same ecosystem and they all need to work together to advance whatever is going to work best for a particular geography or community. And so by looking at different stakeholders within that ecosystems, you can understand deeply, well, what are the conditions in which they operate? What are the compliance requirements that they have to meet? What are their goals and what does accountability look like to them so that you can understand that particular piece, understand somebody else's piece, and then see how can they actually align to do better work.
So Maria, you're fantastic. You're talking my language. I know it sometimes when I speak with different agencies and people and I speak about ecosystem and efficiency and accountability, they look at me like I'm foreign. But my career has really been focused on that. When I've worked with private equity firms and I've come into organizations, I take the next several weeks, I'm completing a SWOT analysis, and it's happening really quick. So for those leaders and those businesses that had never been through that process, in several weeks, I have a full strategic plan. Usually it's within the first week. I've got a fully documented program. I'm looking at the systems, how they're optimizing, and I'm looking at what they do well, what they don't do well, just a simple SWOT analysis. And you're doing the same thing, it sounds like.
Yeah, definitely need those landscape assessments, the PESTLE, the SWOT, understanding what are the external factors, what are the internal factors, what are the human factors that are impacting an organization's ability to do its best work, really. And then I'm a facilitator. I love bringing people on a journey together to change because, let's be honest, change is scary.
It is.
And it's hard. And especially in many of these organizations, especially if you're government, may have become really, really accustomed to a certain set of operations.
Absolutely.
And there's a reason why those were created. And so change can be hard.
It is.
But if you facilitate a journey, I've found, and you bring all the stakeholders along with you on that journey, then it can be truly magical, because then piece by piece, as you're going through that journey together, people can see, no, we can do this a different way.
Right.
We can, even just some small tweaks could really make a difference for how we work with our partners, our clients, our operators, our customers. And
I was a certified trainer in the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People.
there you go.
And again, it's really the same premise. So I'd love to know, without mentioning any clients, what was probably your most complicated engagement? What does it look like? So if someone's listening and looking at this program and they bring you on, what does that process look like? How do you help them achieve those goals? Because you're right, change is so scary, whether the private sector or government. So I'd love for you to kind of think through that. And while you think through that process, it's important for people to know that this program is live, right? It's not rehearsed. You didn't have this question in advance. And so I'm putting you on the spot and asking, but I'd love to know, for those people listening, and they're coming to you at Viking Impact Advisors, what does it look like? How do you help them become better at what they do?
Yeah. Well, there are a lot of consultants out there, and there are a lot of requests for things like strategic plans,
Right.
or evaluations, right, of a program. And in our world, a lot of times that is a check mark exercise.
Right.
That is a funder, a donor, a board that's requiring an organization to go through this process.
Right.
And so they'll bring on somebody like me to, facilitate it. And then they'll get a pretty document at the end of the day. It will spell out what they're going to do, or it will give them the evaluation performance of their program. And then that pretty document will be presented and put on a shelf and never used again.
You're so right. Keep going.
And so the biggest challenge that I have, but also the biggest opportunity, and I think what drives me in this work, is how can I convert those disbelievers into believers, right? Even if you're doing this with me because somebody told you had to, how can I facilitate a journey that's going to make sense for you? How can I help make your life easier and better through this journey? So that even if you are a career coach or a contractor manager or whatever it may be, that you can still see yourself in the end, and that this process will be helpful to you too.
Right.
So that at the end of the day, when we come up with a beautiful document, a plan, a strategy, a report, whatever it may be, it's actually going to speak to you, and you're going to be excited to tell all your friends about it.
Right. Now, so of all the contracts you've been, what was the most unique? Is there one that just stands out as, and I asked the question because I think it's helpful as companies start to evaluate, organizations start to evaluate how they can improve and how they can change. Sometimes they don't know they need to change.
Right.
And sometimes they don't know what change would look like. So they keep doing the same thing, even though it might not be moving a community forward. But what was one of the most unique circumstances that you came across where you've helped someone navigate a better place?
Yeah, happy to share, and I'm happy to name them. This is partly why I'm here at the conference today, is to speak in one of the sessions with this amazing group in Central Ohio. It's called the Central Ohio Workforce Development Network.
Very nice.
And they were for years just a loose association of 14 workforce development organizations in the Columbus metro area that had recognized that they weren't achieving optimal impact because they were working in silo. They were serving many of the same job seekers, customers, but they weren't aligning systems, processes, referrals, and so that ultimately was not allowing the customer job seeker to access the best possible services, right? And Yet we all know we're working in a resource scarce world. A lot of times these organizations were competing for funding, we're competing for lawmakers' attention. And so just like in private business, there's every reason to not collaborate and share, right? This in the economic incentives are really make it hard to come together. Yet we know at the end of the day, that's ultimately going to serve our communities better. And so despite those odds, these 14 organizations came together and said, we're going to do this. We're going to collaborate. And not only are we going to talk about collaboration, which many people do, but we're actually going to formalize it. So they took this step to pool resources, identify a backbone organization to kind of house the entity, and create an official network structure, hire an executive director. And that's the person that I ended up working with, the brand new director of this network. And he had a tough job because even though there was this sort of tentative agreement among the organizations to work together, I talked to all of the 14 member CEOs, and they were all kind of like, yes, I'm in, but I'm sort of halfway in, halfway out. Let's wait and see. Let's see how this pans out. And they had identified as a need to develop a strategic plan as kind of a first step. Hire a director, develop a strategic plan, because that way they could get clear on what is it that we're trying to accomplish. So that's where I come in. I help them develop this strategic plan. And the goal from the start was we need to develop a strategic plan that's going to super clarify what everybody's going to be working towards. What does success look like? 3 years down the road, what do we want this network to taste like, to feel like? What is it going to take for each one of the members to feel like this is worthwhile their time and precious attention? So that's what we did. We went through this journey together. We developed an incredible plan and strategy for how this network can solidify itself and serve all of the 14 members in ways that are going to make them feel like it's worth it.
14 members, 14 CEOs merging into one. That's really the whole purpose of this specific program. Because we've seen, as you mentioned, people working in silos, whether it's silos between states, between communities, between cities, between different parts of the agencies in our U.S. country. They operate in silos, and I think sometimes they're unwilling to let go of their own domain in order to provide a better service to the community. And so that's quite inspirational to me. I'd love to have you tell that story again. I won't have you do it. But just the idea of getting 14 CEOs, that is not a small feat. That is really complicated.
It is hard.
I had an interview with one of our people who mentioned that he did something similar with 5 agencies, and that was hard. So to do it with 14 is just incredible. But what's also neat, though, is that they were willing to go through that journey. You mentioned they were half in, half out. But at least they were there, and it sounds like it's moved forward.
It has. One of the members is here today, and she will tell everybody that given the pressures on her time and the demands, she serves she leads an organization that serves reentry population, so people with experience in the criminal justice system, reentering employment after some time behind bars. And she said, and she will tell you, she didn't feel like the rest of the community necessarily prioritized the people that she serves. And so it was a question of, should I invest in this or not? Right. Is my time best just serving my populations? But through this process and through this journey together, it became clear that being at the table provided a platform to generate knowledge, to share, to advocate, and actually break down some of those silos, build those bridges, and help the other organizations better understand so that they could also lean in to serving
Absolutely.
a more diverse population.
And you made me think of this. I was speaking to a company owner. This has been over a decade ago that I was really good friends with. He built a company that was, let's say, $10 million. It was a good business. It was showing great promise. Private equity, and he owned 100% of the company. He had investors from his family, but he owned 100% of the company. Private equity came to him and said, we want to buy your company. They were buying similar companies and merging them into a bigger company. And I asked him one day, what made you decide to sell? And he said, I can be a 100% owner of a small business or a 30% owner, because private equity is going to buy about 70%, a 30% owner of a much larger company that's 10 times more in revenue. And so my share, even at 30%, is much larger than my 100% share at 10%. And I mention it to say that sometimes people look at the 100% and think, I want to be full ownership.
Right.
So you got these CEOs, they have their own business. But for someone to say, I think my population will be better served by me being a part of this 14-member organization, and I'm willing to give up some of my control and silo to be a part of something that has a great impact, that's a huge give.
It is.
And sacrifice to better serve the community.
It is. Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you sharing the story. How would someone engage with you? How do they find you? What does that process look like? How long is a typical engagement for you?
Great question. So I have a website, vikingimpact.com,
Very nice.
not hard to find. And I can work on any timeline. This process of this one strategic plan was 3 months, which is very fast.
It is fast.
But seriously, we can do something quick. We can engage for a year. It's really, I don't have, a fixed package of engagement because I really believe in making it fit your condition, fit whatever your situation and timeline is. A lot of times people engage consultants when they realize they have money to spend before the end of a particular kind of
And that's
period.
very true. Or I found I was working with one other organization, a big school system, and they engaged with one of the big consulting firms. And I looked at the report, and it looked like it was a report that was copied from another report somewhere. I'm sure it wasn't. It wasn't. But my point is that engaging with a more boutique organization like yours is a different experience.
It is.
So I'd love for you to talk about the experience that these organizations get with you. Again, not to diminish those big consulting firms because they provide a good service, but it's a different process and a different engagement, and the level of involvement from the founder and owner being you is different.
I think it is because my top priority is to make something that's going to ultimately work for you, right? Like I will adjust my approach, I will adjust my fee structure to really work for you, because at the end of the day, my success is that whatever we do together is going to work for you, and that you're going to tell all your friends about it.
So I presume most of yours comes from referrals, most of your new business from people who like Ohio that have seen your work in action.
Yeah, exactly. They've worked, they worked with somebody who worked with me, or that I, meet in places like this, but it's through a personal connection, right?
Right.
So, yes, very human-centered.
Now, how far across the U.S. do you work? So, Ohio, you're based in Washington, D.C., you work in Ohio. What parts of the other country are you in?
Yeah, so most of my engagements have been sort of, Central, Midwest, East Coast, East, right? I have yet to fully go all the way west.
But you're not opposed to it.
I'm not opposed to it. Certainly, these challenges can be found all over the country. And prior to this engagement, I worked internationally all around the world. So
I want to get to some of your international involvement. Why workforce development? Of all the consulting segments you can provide guidance to in strategic planning isn't unique to workforce development. Everyone's doing it. Why workforce development?
It's what gives my soul the greatest joy. Is the short answer, because if we can truly empower a citizenry to lean into economic engagement, economic mobility, then we can truly empower that citizenry to support the nation, to support their families, and the transformation of supporting somebody on their career journey is just truly, truly rewarding. I've always known I wasn't going to be the career coach, though. I was going to be the systems supporter. So a few steps away from that, end user, but still part of the same world that ultimately makes the engine of our entire nation's economy do better.
I built my first recruiting program at a for-profit organization over 25 years ago, which was part of the human resource team. And kind of like you, for me, looking back on it now, it was really the workforce development component within this organization. It's how do I find good talent to bring into the organization, and then how do I help make them successful within the business? And matching great people with a great job is so fulfilling.
Right.
I loved it.
Yeah.
Like telling people the story of the company and why we can help them build their career and what it meant to come join our culture and our team and our family. And it was a national operation. It was so enjoyable.
I believe that. And I want to mention one more thing, which is that aside from the satisfaction it gives me, it's also like a puzzle that should be solved.
Right.
There are so many employers out there looking for talent. There's so much incredible talent, untapped talent.
Right.
The workforce participation rate in America has just been steadily going down.
Right.
Why is that? That is a missed opportunity.
It is.
And so it really feels like we should be working to fix that. We should build this puzzle, right? We should get that connected. And then if we do, I think the whole country will really...
And you have a unique perspective and expertise in defining how the U.S. works. So you've done international work, but you were also born and raised in Sweden.
I was, yes.
And you said that the Sweden approach to workforce development is very different from the United States. Can you tell us?
It is, and it's understandably so because it's a much smaller country.
Right.
And so they have a centralized system.
Okay.
And they have that for a lot of things.
Sure.
And one could argue that the United States is a country of states, and part of the beauty of the United States is that each state does get to set its own policies and practice. Right. And there is some merit to that, right? Sure. Each state has its own sort of culture and practice and laws and systems. And so it makes sense in some ways, why the United States would decentralize so many of its supports and services and engagements with people. But at the same time, there are certain things in the United States that are centralized, like Social Security, right? Like Medicare. Those are federal systems that, yes, they are administered by the states, but everybody in America gets it, right? And they get it to more or less the same level. Right. If you're looking for workforce development support in America, you can have vastly different experiences and vastly different services available to you depending on where you live, which I don't agree with. I think no matter where you are in America, you should be able to access an abundance of different supports and services so that there's never a question about somebody being ready and willing to help you with whatever you need, whether that's help repairing your car so that you can get to your training, or help with childcare so that you can spend your weekend upskilling into the next phase of your career, right? And those kinds of supports and services just aren't available all around the country. Whereas in Sweden, because it's a more of a national system, there's one agency that supports workforce development, and it's the same agency that manages unemployment insurance.
Okay. Interesting.
So, even though unemployment insurance and workforce development are supposed to be connected in the United States, they're often run by different agencies at the state level, and they don't always connect.
That is so true.
And so in Sweden, you file your unemployment with one agency, which is the same agency that then supports your upskilling, reskilling, training.
So, Maria, you are such a wealth of knowledge. And I hope that organizations find their way to you to help them figure out how to better serve the people in their communities, in their states, and in our country. So I appreciate you joining us. Tell us again your organization and where people can find you.
I'm Maria Posey, CEO and founder of Viking Impact Advisors, which is vikingimpact.com.
And you can be found. You're based in DC, but you will travel the entire United States. And you can even support anyone looking internationally for
If they
guidance.
want to, for sure. Yep.
Thank you for joining us on the program.
Thank you so much, Ronnie, for having me.
And thank you for joining us on the I Build America podcast, where we bring to you ideas and insight to help the entire United States and communities improve workforce development.
Thank you for listening to the I Build America podcast. Please subscribe, share, and comment, and be sure to join us next time for more insights and inspiring conversations on building a powerful American workforce. I Build America, building workforce success one podcast at a time.